Hey, Sydney, welcome to the Z Learning Podcast. Thank you for stopping by today.
Hi, Seb. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Awesome. It's great to have you. So, Sydney, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. Basically, who is Sydney Campos? Um, yeah, just fill my for the few listeners who
Sure.
don't know.
Hey. Oh, well, first of all, it's really nice to connect with you in this way. We met because of Lunch Club, that really cool little startup that came back into my radar. And if anybody doesn't know Lunch Club, it's such a cool networking, like it's not even an app, it's like a site where you can just meet great people and do like little weekly meetups and online and just little coffee dates almost. So we met through that. And then I realized like, wow, you have this awesome agency. I think you could help me with some of my business stuff. And we got to talking a little bit about my one of my startups. So I have a few different things I do. First and foremost, I love to guide people through powerful transformation and healing so they can really live their purpose, own their power, and just live a fulfilling, really joyful life. So that's my number one passion and really what I'm most committed to. And then everything else I create is kind of also wrapped up in that same goal and intention. So I teach retreats, host different types of immersions, I mentor visionary leaders, I have tons of different coaching programs and online courses and trainings, all about helping people really tune in with their purpose and their power generally. And then I teach widely on this concept of embodied ascension, which is what I've written about in my newest book called I'm Ascending. Now What? It's kind of like a manual for awakening and really like the book I wish I had when I was born as a human. Like, how do we do this life thing and consciously and with presence? So I lived a life kind of learning the hard way about what not to do so that hopefully other people don't have to go through so many dark nights. And so that book just came out in June. And then about 3 years
Congratulations.
ago, oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's such a pleasure. And it'll be fun to share more about that live in person and events in New York. I love teaching workshops and guiding meditations and just bringing people together for like real authentic connection and fun, basically. And then, prior to my own coaching consulting practice, I worked in media and ad agencies and PR for many years. And I lived in New York when I was doing that. And I've completed a 7-year cycle where I was away from New York and now I'm back. And so it feels really fun to be back in the energy here. And yeah, and just remembering like the start, in agencies and helping build companies and brands. And I've always been kind of a strategy side person and I love just innovating and coming up with strategies. And then I also weirdly love operations and like keeping things really organized and getting things done really efficiently and effectively. So about 3 years ago, this guy reached out to me on Instagram and I was like, okay, like didn't pay too much attention to it. I get a lot of messages, but my intuition told me like, wait a minute, there's something here. You should talk to this guy. And sure enough, we have a call. We realize there are all these synchronicities between like our careers, how we grew up. He even worked with one of my former, colleagues a long time ago. We like intersected in all these ways. And there was just this feeling like we're supposed to build something together. We don't know what yet, but there's something here. Like it wasn't random that we met. And then sure enough, long story short, I had a vision. I do a lot of psychic energy healing and I train intuitive facilitators. That's another piece of my practice and what I love to share. And so I had this vision of this like nervous system, like a new nervous system, a new network, a new kind of design infrastructure for what felt like a social media platform, but it was unlike anything I ever seen. It was almost like a holographic interface or from the future. And then I had a meditation where I saw David, the person who I had just spoken to recently from the Instagram message. I saw his face like flashing. And I'm like, okay, I should reach out to David about this. This is interesting. It's a pretty direct message. And then I tell him briefly what I kind of saw, wasn't sure how it would land. And he's like, oh, what do you think about this? And he sends me a 50-page deck that he had been working on for a long time that really just showed exactly what I saw, which was, this app, which we now have built into a social platform. Really, we're calling it a growth-based social community because it's really unlike anything you've ever seen. And it's a totally different landscape of what we know as social media. And it's called Ascend. And yeah, that's another reason why I'm in New York, fundraising, meeting, collaborators, creators, and It's just what I wish I always had, and it doesn't exist. So, we had to make it. And I know the world is really ready for a new place to create and share and really connect online without all the noise and the interference and the censorship and all that stuff.
That's all really exciting. That's amazing. And, I think that's a very entrepreneurial thing. You want something in the world that doesn't exist, you go and make it yourself. And having worked in marketing, social media, public relations, you obviously see a lot of different things, some that you probably don't like, some that you do like. I think a lot of people today are definitely seeking authentic connections and community. So I just wanted to ask you, based on your background and now creating your own social media platform, what do you think of the current state of social media, and how can we improve it to make life better for the human species?
Great question. Well, I really don't think that there's any way we can save the current state of affairs. So we had to build a whole new game, basically. I don't think that there's anything. When we look at the intention of how all of the main platforms started, there really wasn't one, actually. They were mainly started by a really similar archetype of a man who's like, a college guy trying to start a, hot or not site,
Right.
Facebook, a bourbon site, Instagram, you know, YouTube got famous from Janet Jackson's like nipple slip at the Super Bowl. Like there
Wow.
just wasn't a lot of intentionality of like, let's build something to really help people connect and grow and learn and be
Nothing
empowered.
conscious, just yeah.
No, there's nothing really conscious. And then these things, but listen, like I'm so grateful for these platforms. I met my business partner on Instagram. I've met clients from all over the world who've come across the world to go to retreats with me, to work with me. Some of my clients I've worked with in coaching, I've never even met in person. And we've worked together in the most intimate ways for like 6 months, sometimes more. And this to me is like phenomenal and shows what is possible in the digital age with social media. Like it's incredible. There's so much promise, but these current platforms, I really don't think there's anything we can do to save them. There's just so much distortion, manipulation, spam, toxicity, censorship. It's even just coming more to the forefront of awareness now that, the extent to which the damage is really being done here, like in terms of the damage to mental health, to emotional well-being, the data tracking, the privacy infringements, the that's a whole other story, the psychographic targeting of advertising. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to be a Facebook advertising strategist back in 2012, and now I'm sure it's like way worse than it was back then. And so there's just that key piece though of intention is really missing. And so I don't think that there's any saving these platforms, because it's like we have to look at the root of where something began,
Mhm.
and I don't think that there's any going back after all of this time. And it's like these platforms have dug themselves in. Don't even get me started on TikTok, right? It's like I can't even look at that. I can't even look at it for more than like 5 seconds before I just feel like this, it's so disruptive to my nervous system. And it just feels like it's hooking in my energy like vampirically. And the whole user experience is
Not
really
to
just
mention the Chinese
designed.
government take possibly having access to your
Right.
data.
Very much so, yes. But that's the other thing with these platforms. They're designed, we call it social media 1.0, right? And they're designed intentionally to hook you in like like a gambling slot machine. And it's funny with Ascend, it's all very, I think orchestrated by a higher plan in terms of the timing that we had this in, meeting, Instagram, I had this intuitive hit, we started working on it. As I was starting to build our first investor deck, The Social Dilemma, the movie came out, which was like this deep dive expose on, the current state of social media and just how damaging it really is. And one of my favorite quotes from that documentary, or really just movie, is, there's only two industries in the world that call their customers users: the international drug trade and social media. So
Wow. Yeah.
that just says it, that really says it all. And literally you can start to maybe engage, people listening, maybe you can start to engage with your platforms a little bit more consciously and just notice like, wow, how is the design here intentionally coded to hook my attention in? Where is my dopamine getting spiked? Where am I getting addicted? And you can look at the slot machine design where it's just like the endless scrolling. You can look at what that does to your system. You can look at the little red notifications and notice what that does and how that feels. It's just a way of like being more mindful, getting curious, just noticing, and
Yeah.
it's just really different. It's a really different game. And so we designed something in Ascend like completely different in terms of like, we wanted to create an experience that feels calming, soothing, welcoming. It's like it's a completely different reality in many ways. And that's just the design. The functionality is also very different. And we intentionally made it so that the member of our community has a lot of curation ability as to how their experience feels. They're not just like thrown into an experience and it's like, do this, look at this, you're hooked in. It's like, no, how do you want to engage? And a lot of the features we built in at the very beginning years ago, these other social media 1.0 platforms have like kind of started to catch up on, but because they were like legally told to do so, like they had to put a timer on the screen time for kids. They had to like, it's
Right.
just funny, a lot of stuff we thought of from the beginning because we just wanted to do the right thing and help people and create a good experience. These other platforms are getting like they're getting what's that word, like they're getting almost like punished, like they have to do it to like make up for
Right.
all of the damage they're causing.
Right. Like TikTok, at least in China, which is very telling, not in the United States, but in China they have like bedtimes basically. And
Mm.
a lot of the content is more educational. There's, you mentioned about Facebook. In some ways it's become maybe a little bit better, but not because I think Facebook wanted to make it better, but in the last few years, there've been with GDPR and
Mhm.
Mark Zuckerberg going before the US Congress, they have made it so that you can't target by certain interests, and they've made it a little bit tougher for marketers to get some data, but I mean it's still extremely, a lot of the things you mentioned about the toxicity, the bullying, the manipulation, I think a lot of people really resonate with that. I think it's definitely all true. I think personally, on a personal level, like you mentioned how it, just like a drug, plays with people's dopamine. I think my nervous system's definitely uh, more effed up than it would be anyway, thanks to a lot of these social platforms. So would love to,
Mhm.
we'll obviously include some more details about your new social platform and all the work you're doing in the show notes. Why would you say creating community is so important today? And how can
Mm.
social platforms, or I guess there's no hope for the existing social platforms, but how can new ones like yours do a better job of creating community either online or offline?
Mhm. Well, listen, I don't want to like totally just put down the other ones. Like they serve a great purpose, and I'm still showing up on Instagram and Facebook, but it honestly it's just, I think it's a matter of time before more people kind of like start to get sensitized to what we're talking about. And they're just like, the network effect has been so fascinating to watch, because I'm like, wait, we built the new thing that feels great. Why isn't everybody just rushing over here and being in our community? But it's been really fascinating to watch and just, yeah. So it's like the initial platforms, we're going to have a period of bridging. So I don't want to totally put them down and knock them because there is opportunity to create community there. And I just moved to New York and I was like looking at Facebook groups for New York dance and things. And I'm like, wow, this is really amazing. There's so many groups here for New York. And I happened to look at one and what I noticed, Ev, was like, it was really interesting. It was like this some group about New York events or something. And I just saw all these people posting like, hey, I just moved to New York and I'm looking for friends
Mm-hmm.
and in a Facebook group. And I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. And then this reminds me of like yesterday, I was in Target running some errands, and this girl stops me in Target and she gives me some compliment, and it was really sweet. But I could kind of tell that she was really looking to make friends. She was, because I saw her later in the store talking to someone else and just kind of like trying to strike up conversation. And again, I'm like reading into this maybe at way more depth than the average person because this is just how I am. But it made me feel like, wow, maybe people are really lonely, especially even in a big city
Yes.
like New York where there's so many people. And but is there real connection happening? And even people who have
Right.
jobs and you're in a career and you have a team, but are you really connecting in the ways that feel nourishing, that feel supportive, that are really what you want? And I don't think so. I don't think that most
No.
people are. And there's something really, it feels like an urgency, comes up in me around that. And it's like, wow, okay, we created Ascend as a place where people can really deeply connect in a more authentic way. And hopefully, I mean, the dream with Ascend isn't for people to just be on our app all the time and be online and be on their phone, but to like create in-person community and connection and make real friends. And but how do we make real friends if we're not really being ourselves, And current social media, I would say, and I've really gone through the ringer in this myself, just having had my business online for almost 10 years. And like current social media, I don't think really encourages real authenticity. It's like
No.
a lot of the influencer model we see and the ways that even like communities I've noticed are formed and on different social platforms. It's like, I don't know if it's really the platform itself doesn't seem designed to really accommodate, welcome, or empower real intimacy, depth, or authenticity. And again, I think this speaks to the founders and the root of the creation of these platforms. Like they didn't have that. So how could the platform have that? And then that's a differentiator for
Mm.
my business partner and I. Like we're devoted to personal growth, expansion, embodying like authenticity, and we both teach this and have been on the path for many years. Me for like 12 years since my awakening. And it doesn't really matter, but we are really devoted to this like higher purpose of being real in our lives and then creating things in the world that also help other people. It's like a healing, transformative experience, not just an app.
Wow.
And I think you feel that when you get into Ascend just by the nature of how we designed it. And it has a lot to do with like who we are. That's like the energy that we bring into our lives, into our communities. It's infused throughout the platform. And I think we can see this with like any founder. It's like the founder, creator of whatever it is, service, product, platform, community. It's like their energy, their essence, who they are. It like that reverberates through whatever they create. So if they're like not empowered, if they're not authentic, if they're not really open to like depth and connection, how are they going to have a community that really facilitates those things if they're not able to actually create that for themselves? So these
Yes.
are some of the things I pay attention to, and I'd love to know what you think as well. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, no, no. I think you did. I think you touched on a lot of points that are very relevant. I think it's crazy that more than like billions of people in the world are on these platforms that were started by some guys who were just like either looking to get girls or talk about whiskey or whatever it was. And with, like you said, not conscious or any intentionality. And now they have the social responsibility of basically being the entire world's water cooler. And they're now kind of manipulating our dopamine and calling us users. It is kind of like a drug, and I think there's so many positives of social media and of all the different platforms, but a lot of this, a lot of the growing pains of 1.0, as you mentioned, going into 2.0, I think probably a lot of them in hindsight we could have seen coming, right?
Hmm.
And I think that people really are searching for community. Obviously, people, it's not like in the olden days where people like lived in small villages or everybody went to some was part of a tribe or house of worship. I think a lot of us we're on the go, we're on the move, especially after COVID. A lot of us are working remotely now. There's been a lot of brokenness and fragmentation in terms of sense of community. And as much as we can order everything to go on our smartphone from Amazon, or we can make friends, I put in quotes, not, I wouldn't really call friends or followers on social media.
Hmm.
I think a lot of us, even in this day and age, maybe more than ever, are really looking for something more like real heart to heart connection, authentic relationships. So it would be really cool to see where this goes and how your platform can have an impact. So going back to all the important points you made about loneliness in today's world and finding community, I'm curious, Sydney, as a freelancer, solopreneur, entrepreneur, that can be a very lonely road. Even today, with so many people working remotely, so many people
Mm.
in big cities like New York looking for community, what can you advise, particularly self-employed individuals? What can you tell them to do to either find or create community?
Yeah. I really think about this a lot when I was especially like just landing back in New York, and something I was so excited about was like the huge options, the spectrum of options for co-working
Hmm.
places, because I actually really thrive when I'm working around other people. I even really like to be in busy cafes, and I know that's maybe not true for everybody, but I kind of focus when there's actually more stimulation and like noise
Same.
around me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. And the first WeWork I checked out, which I'd never been to, was just the vibe didn't really feel great to me in there, So I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like, I really need to find a place where I can feel like my community is there. So for me, that's looking like trying out a few different places and doing little tours and visiting like a diverse array of different, offices, and just really seeing like, where do I feel the most comfortable? Where do I feel like the most welcomed, and where do they also have like events and networking activities and like cool things going on beyond just like working in an office, like in a little cubicle or something, so
Yeah.
that's one thing that I look for. And like other solopreneurs or nomads even can for freelancers can look for, like, find what works for you, and if you want to find more community and in-person community, like co-working spaces are great for that. And especially like the more startup-y ones, I notice are like a little bit more the vibe that I'm looking for. And WeWork is maybe more, can be a little bit more corporate, depending on maybe the location as well. I mean, I was at the one right by like Carnegie Hall, kind of like
Oh
right
yeah,
in
very
Midtown.
much. It
So
depends on the neighborhood. Yeah, the location.
yeah, yeah. But I was also a digital nomad for a really long time. Like, I traveled and ran my business for like 6 years, and I was all over the world. And so I would always
Oh,
just even Google, like, where's like the nomad, or remote working, like clubhouse or cool cafes. And I always say, like, be the permission that you're waiting for other people to like
oh,
have in the world. Like, be friendly, be inviting, be welcoming, like, be the kind of presence that you wish existed, because it's like we're all waiting for someone else to like be the first one to say hi or like strike up a conversation and connect. Everybody wants connection. They're just afraid, or they're shy, or they don't know how to start or initiate. And so I love to be that person that's just like, hey, who are you? What's up? How are you doing? What are you up to? And you just never know who you can meet that way, also, when you're really listening to that deeper resonance and like really paying attention. This is talking about mindfulness and like how connected are you to yourself. And when you're connected to yourself, you can usually feel, if you're in a group or out in a cafe or in a co-working place, you can kind of feel naturally if you're starting to gravitate towards someone, and
yeah,
listen to that. It's
the
usually
vibe.
not, yeah, it's usually not random. It's like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to like meet that person or talk to them. So why not, initiate and just add, and also just bringing kindness and more connection into someone else's life. You never know. Maybe it goes nowhere, but you just made that person's day by asking them genuinely like how they are. And then, the other thing I love, I mean, I guess maybe I take for granted how much rich community I have because I've created it for myself, and I, host retreats, and I create online communities, and I teach workshops, and I've created it. But for people that are wondering how they can create more community or plug into like a new type of community, especially if you're in an awesome city or you're, but really it's like everywhere nowadays. Like, what do you love to do? What are some things that you're passionate about? And if the community doesn't exist where you live, maybe you're the one that's meant to create it. Maybe
Yeah,
other people are like looking to join you in the thing that you love to do, like painting or qigong or meditation or whatever, any kind of activity. And maybe you're supposed to start that up, or I mean, I can't help but just like reference New York because I'm so excited about all the options that are here after living in like very remote Hawaii for the last little bit. And, I'm going to be checking out different yoga studios and going to like cacao ceremonies and sound baths and just different, and even like startup networking events, to just see like what's happening here, and always following also a resonance and a curiosity, not just like filling my schedule for no reason, but really, noticing again from the place of being connected with myself, what types of events and communities are naturally feeling really resonant and kind of like calling me to consider joining. So yeah, those are some pointers. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's the clip we're gonna have to use in the social promotion where you said about initiating and be the permission, and
Hmm.
just going out there. I'll say another thing I know that helped me with networking and stuff like that. First of all, there's tons of great virtual networking groups. Like We Met on Lunch Club, that's a great one.
Hmm.
There are other ones where there's like chapters or groups that meet virtually at different times. I'm part of. Another great app is Meetup, very underrated app in my opinion. It's not a social network,
Hmm.
not a social platform really, like Facebook or Ascension, but it's more you could find local things around different interests, like maybe yoga or ballet or I don't know, making sushi, whatever it is. They have these different ones. Some are business, some are not. Um, but that's definitely one way you can meet a lot of people in your city, your neighborhood. Um, Still there, I think.
Meetup
Oh,
is great.
yeah,
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 no, meetup is awesome. I was gonna say that, for places that, for people that are in, not huge metropolitan areas, like meetup is actually an amazing resource. And especially if you want to start something, like, and actually something else that's coming to mind when I was in New York the last round, years ago, what I love to do was volunteering. Like I just love to do service and give back. And I mean, it's just so you mentioned like, we're not really, and this has been really in my field lately, this conversation of like, we're not in the village anymore. We're not like going to church all the time. We're not in these like small little, we're hyper connected to the global, it's like we're oversaturated by so much connection. But it's not the real depth of connection, I think, in a lot of cases that we really want. And so, how do we
not personal.
recreate?
Yeah.
Yeah, like exactly. Like, how do we create almost like what is the new model of like the modern church or like the religion, like the spiritual community or like this deeper connection, like this community based in more depth and authenticity and growth, right? Which are some of the core ethics of why we built Ascend. It's all about growth and expansion and supporting each other through that. And so one of the ways I love to connect with community along those intentions is through volunteering. And there's so many great organizations, nonprofits. I mean, especially in cities, like you can check out, even being on a board of a nonprofit. That's something I love to do in my, for professionals and people who are like badasses and whatever you're doing in your career, consider how much knowledge you have that you take for granted, and you have no idea that you're like sitting on a gold mine and you just take it for granted because it's just like, the requirements to be in your industry. But your intel, your insight could be life-changing for someone else. And so how can you give yourself opportunities to be of service? One of the things I love to do is volunteer business coaching with ex-cons. There was like this awesome organization called Defy Ventures. They are so cool. They do entrepreneurial training for formerly incarcerated felons who are really like, if you think about it, the most badass entrepreneurs of all. They were just doing illegal business.
Right. Now you could
So
transfer like drug dealing to, pharmaceuticals or whatever,
yeah,
some other
whatever.
business.
Exactly. So it was
Yeah.
so fun to coach these, business coaching with these really cool people that just wanted to like create a new business doing something, legally. And it was like, that was so fun. And it helped me not only to like just be of service and that felt good, but it also helped me feel like this appreciation for my own experience that is just so fulfilling. And so I really recommend that. Like, get out and mentor, get out and volunteer, get out and give back. And then you'll probably meet great people that are in a similar mind frame. And I love to associate with other people that are in that kind of abundance mindset of like, where can I give back?
Love it. Yeah. So if you want community, you want friends, you want fulfillment, I think the best way, as you said, is to give it to others, to help other people, reach out to people, give them a shot, mentor, do acts of service. I think that's a really beautiful and very true idea. So as we close out, I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about Ascend, your new social platform. If there's anything else also, like I think you have a book coming out, any other, of course, we're going to link up all your stuff, all your treats and your coaching program. We're going to put it all in the show notes, but would love to know what's next for you and what you're excited
Mm.
about.
Thanks, Ev. Yeah, what a rich conversation. I really love all the different points we hit. And I
Right.
don't know if there's too much I would want to add, honestly. Ascend, it's like that could be a many hours conversation, but really my intention is to create the space with everything I do. Like it's to create the things I wish existed in this world. And I think we built the best thing ever. I think it's awesome. It's just a matter of more people knowing about it. So if what I've shared so far, what we've discussed, resonates and you're curious about engaging in a new kind of community we have a couple thousand people on the platform. There's like people out from all over the world.
Oh,
And I think it's like the best people and they're really creating in what feels to be a different way. Like the content feels more genuine and real and just like people sharing from their heart. And,
you describe a little bit. I mean, I'm
yeah.
sure people will look at it and demo it, but like,
Mhm.
I guess the layout, is it like people sharing pictures? Is it audio, like Clubhouse? Like, you just walk us
Yeah,
through a little bit what
sure.
it's like.
It's basically, it's very similar to Instagram, TikTok interfaces, but like totally different design ethos, like I mentioned, but very similar, like short form video, text content, pictures, really similar functionality, and also some really unique features like content moderation done by the community, which is our built-in solution for censorship. And we really make it super easy for everybody to monetize their work. Like you can tip people in their post just right away, like, here's $1. You really impacted me with this video. And again, all kinds of stuff that all the other big platforms have like kind of brought in recently. We built at the very beginning, and then a lot of new things. Like we have, the ability to have patronage tiers if you want to bring like your community over in that way and just have like your own everything all in one place. As a creator who's had like all my platforms for so long running my business, part of my intention in building Ascend was like, I want all the best features of all the platforms, but in one place instead of like, I go here for YouTube and LinkedIn and I'm reaching all these different people in these different disjointed places. What about if I just have it all in one and all the tools I want as a creator to have my courses, my communities, my groups, it's all there. And there's no censorship, there's no spam, there's no toxicity, there's no fake bots or influencers or fake accounts. You can't buy followers. In fact, it's not even about that. We have a whole different metric of credibility and success on the platform, which is about the actual value that you provide, which is achieved by how the community measures you, like through rating your content. So it's like just totally different feeling. And if this resonates, I'd love to see you on Ascend. And I would say that like the community starting to really build it out are people that are tending to share about consciousness and ascension and awakening and personal growth, and I love that, and that's awesome. And my vision for it is to like be really diverse, and at some point when we have thousands and millions and billions of people on it, we'll have subject matter experts from every content category you could imagine, so that you could go onto Ascend and you could learn and grow in whatever area that you are uniquely interested in, and you could be easily connected with the best, most resonant teacher and expert in what you're looking for without all the noise and without all the distractions of like, this person has a million fake followers, so they must be the best.
Right,
We're
right.
just like, we're cutting all the noise out. And really like, I think about the new people that are kind of just coming to and they're awakening and they're like, oh my God, or they're feeling lonely, or people who are like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? I feel like I'm not connected to my purpose. And I want to grow and I want to be connected and I want to feel more myself. And the Ascend can be this place where they go and they start to have more intention for how they want to evolve and how they want to expand. And then they can be connected to the teachers, the experts, the guides, the people just a little bit ahead of them on the path that they wouldn't have otherwise found. Because again, there's not all the distraction and the noise of like the fake following and the influencers and all this stuff. And then you can find like your real community based on authentic resonance, so that's what we designed. And I just love it so much. I think it's really just going to take off probably really soon. I really feel the momentum, and I would
Amazing.
love to see you there. You can connect with
Yeah,
me there. You can send me a message.
sure.
I love to hear feedback from people too about what they love. And something I'm going to be launching soon is like monthly calls where we built this great app and we can connect there. But also in the meantime, like how else is the community connecting? So I want to have real in-person events. I want to have more group calls. I want to have, more ways that we can be connected as a community. And yeah, and really be in conversation with the initial like evangelists to get their feedback on what they'd love to see as well.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like what you're creating is meaningful content, meaningful connections, a meaningful community, and shortcutting, like you said, a lot of that noise. So, be very cool to see where that goes. I know building a social media platform, it's an ambitious undertaking, but it sounds like it's something very much needed. I think a lot of people listening to this are going to resonate with it. So, I really wish it a lot of success
Aw.
that it should grow. And we're going to put all the other really cool stuff that you're doing in the show notes.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add one more thing. That was really long, it was much longer than I expected it to be. Thank you. And you can learn about Ascend at www.weascendnow.com. You can also look at all of our new press and some really cool articles, just, sharing more about our vision and all that good stuff. And then my new book, which came out in June, is called I'm Ascending, Now What? And it's all about awakening your truth, embodying your purpose, and just living a really fulfilling, empowered life. It's a lot about trauma healing, nervous system healing, having really intimate, deep relationships, and awakening your intuition. It's a pretty big book, so I'm glad that that's out there in the world, and you can get that at imascendingnowwhat.com. And then yeah, all my other offerings are at sydneycampos.com, and I have a retreat coming up. My only retreat of this year is going to be happening in Bali this November. It's going to be my fourth retreat. I'm leading there for a really intimate group, and it's called Ascensia. It's all about nervous system healing and really just like basking in the beauty of paradise and doing a lot of meditation, yoga, breath work, really tapping into your deeper vision and your purpose and just feeling your absolute best. So, yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Very cool. Awesome. We look forward to it. Definitely going to check out your book and everything else. And thank you so much for being on, Sydney.
Thank you, Zev.